Hello, everyone. Right then, let's see what we've got going on here. Hello. Yeah, hello. Hello, Poodle. You are very cute and adorable. We are taking in questions. Hello. Okay. So I currently have a poodle who's decided that, frankly, beating up his papa is his spare time and his hobby. YouTube Minecraft Watcher has found out that you can really make a long question on Twitch. How is everyone doing today? How are we all doing? How is it going? It should be live. It should be about to push out that we are live. It should be pushing out. It should have done that on various forms and said, everyone, hello, we're live. We are getting in the questions. We are joined by the lovely Foxo, the very interesting Dr. Dan, the stable one amongst us, Dragon. So yeah, this is going to be something Bruships 230. You're suffering from tech gremlins, Jonathan Moon. Yeah, that's happening to a lot of us at the moment. Tech gremlins keep coming up. Yes. Yes. Yay. Yay. I'm just... we are just quickly... we might have done a lot of testing on the bot this afternoon. There might have been a lot of testing on the bot done on this afternoon, which could result in some very interesting things happening in this particular Q&A section, which I'm just now making sure to sort out quickly while the questions are coming in. We're going to be taking in 30 questions. Steve is doing maths. A lot of maths currently going on. Hello, Stafford. Thank you for this. I'm just going to be slightly rude here, but there's a methodology to my madness. I'm making sure that the first question is the first question of today. Hello, Raleigh. You are sufficiently harassing me, I feel. What's up? What do you want? What do you want, Big Fluff? He wants lots of things. Currently, he wants the food of everyone's food in the house. He wants endless hugs and plays. He wants about 5 wanders a day, which, frankly, I wish I had time for, honestly. But I have builders and plumbers I have to keep, watching. And he isn't any help for that, because he just rolls on his back and goes, tickle me. Which doesn't really help with overseeing the plumbers and the builders. Your quality control is literally, do they rub your belly? That's not assisting me. If you could do more on the quality control and the keeping an eye on things and keeping things running on track, we could do more of the wandering stuff. And I know you're very cute, but just getting people to pat you is not quality control. He fundamentally believes it is, though. That's the trouble with him. So, it's Bruships. So, of course, the shirt goes on. So I look vaguely presentable for Bruships. Yeah. Got the perfect thing on the front for today's discussions. And let's get some iron brew, shall we? Got a clean glass, which is what I was delayed doing a second ago. Some people might be slightly worried about the stack of iron brew I have in my corner. It's a sensible amount. It is a very sensible amount. So, hello everyone. How are we doing? How goes it? Can I just ask a question? Why is Knight starting at question 11? We'll hope it's counting down, but this is Knight. It could be counting up. Okay. So, Knight's go for one. Is it true or false that after Hood's last refit, she was back to full power on engines? As I ran into someone who says it's a myth that Hood's engines were worn out by 1940-41. They were certainly... Let's put it this way. The problem you're dealing with here is people's definition of worn out. So it's not really a true or false scenario. After the last refit, the engines have been reconditioned and were pretty good working order and were providing with all the power she needed. However, by 1941, there had been several months of war going on. Those engines had been used quite a lot, quite hard. They're not exactly in the best state, and they're old engines that have been reconditioned to begin with. She hadn't been given new engines. She'd had her engines reconditioned and reworked, which was sensible. She was planned to be going in for a major refit in 1941. It makes sense. You're not going to give her brand new engines when you're going to be ripping the hull apart anyway in a bit, and you might as well you do the new engines then. So basically, you get most warships, even to today, realistically get new engines every decade. It's one of those things of, what are we currently doing with our Type 45s? We're doing a whole lot of power work. Why are we doing that? Well, because if we do that, that will keep going for at least another 10 years. And then they'll probably get some more after that, because let's be honest, at the pace of building the Type 26s and times of taking that, you're probably going to end up replacing the Type 45s around about 2040s. So it's the same with Hood. So you can be, but it's kind of like, what's that? Schrodinger's cat. Which you can tell it's a cat, not a poodle, because a poodle will never allow itself to be put in the box, and B, will never stay still long enough to be in the box, so you're not sure what's the case of what the scenario is of the cat in the of the animal in the box. Although myself, I'm fairly certain the cat probably found a way out the bottom of the box and disappeared off and was off happily getting some food going. Eventually, when they open the box, they're going to be so disappointed I'm not there. Yes. Yes. This is why I think Schrodinger's cat, the whole scenario, shows someone who has never actually had a pet. The mere concept you could get a pet to sit still long enough to stay in a box is a purely theoretical exercise. Alright. Aragunchen. How was the working relationship between Mountbatten and Slim during World War II? They didn't have one. They didn't need to. Realistically, Mountbatten's job was... Well, Mountbatten spends most of his time dealing with politicians and the issues in Southeast Asia. And Slim is basically running down from Burma. And occasionally go hello at distance. They don't really have to work with each other that often to have, realistically, what we call a working relationship. I don't imagine Slim was exactly considered Mountbatten the most useful person. He probably considered him a bit of a popinjay. And Mountbatten probably didn't even think about Slim, because honestly, as far as he was concerned, he rarely seemed to think about people other than his immediate coterie and his fellow destroyer officers. That is his one thing. It's his one redeeming feature of Mountbatten is that he is quite obsessed with his fellow destroyermen. He's very concerned about the fellow flotilla leaders, etc., and people he worked with. He does spend a lot of time working out, and that does help people like Philip Vian, etc., getting up, because he provides them some political coverage occasionally, which is useful. But yeah, Mountbatten is an interesting one. They're not really... They're far enough apart that they don't have to have a relationship. It's not like the senior officers sitting in Alexandria who had to have a relationship. Add a 0. And usually it's 2. Now, so yeah, they were... Hello. Yes, you're cute. You're trying to be the centre of attention again this week, aren't you? But no. Yes, that is definitely his policy. You're not here for nail history, you're here for poodle. I might actually record a video of him someday, just him sitting here, just looking at people, and just put it up as a video for everyone. You've all demanded it. Here is naval history presented by the poodle. Yeah, I know. I think I could probably put together about 10 minutes of footage of him looking like he's actually teaching something. Add in a bit of a sound overlay. It could be fun. Foxo is already thinking this could be ruinous. It's gonna get. No, I was thinking you'll think it's gonna be ruinous because it's gonna give your dogs ideas, and they're gonna be taking over your channel. You see, I worked that one out. Once one dog does it in the group, the others are going to want to do it as well. So, yes, but that's the thing is, if Raleigh sitting there just looking at the screen gets him, any views, sitting in the dark brooding's got to get views, right? And there's competition here between the dogs. Raleigh always approves of having his own channel. Right. US Montana 67. Are the Russians likely to reactivate the Kuznetsov and stop it scrapping just to protect the Shadow Fleet? No. No. Let's put it this way. The interesting thing with protecting their Shadow Fleet is when it comes to stopping warships, you pretty much have to declare war. Okay, let me explain this. Let's say you physically put yourself between yourself and another ship. That's fine. They launch a helicopter and boats. Okay, do you shoot down that helicopter? That's going to be an act of war. So at the moment, the Shadow Fleet, and we'll use that term because it's what people understand the forces, the organizations and the ships by, and the Russians resist that phraseology, but that's mostly because it's a point of order resistance than an actual. It's a difference of perspective rather than a difference of reality. But just the thing, at the moment you've got shadow boxing going on around the Shadow Fleet. You've got a lot of moves going on. Does Russia want to actually find itself in open war with anyone else over this fleet? No. I don't think they've got enough going on with Ukraine. I know there are some people, even in the chat and in the Discord server, who honestly do believe all the claims the Russian defense officials make about the quality of their defenses and their weapon systems. And I do sometimes have to remind them that I know you don't believe Western salesmen, why are you believing the Russian salesman? The amount of people who will say anything that comes out of Lockheed Martin is lie and just salesperson speak, and then they see a Russian claim about their weapon system, and that's got to be verifiable proof. And you sit there and go, no, it's still arms salesmen. They're the same people! Different countries, but same people. Banana 1943. I have a couple of naval questions, but first, do you think the baguette on my counter is okay to eat? It expired yesterday. To the medical doctor. Do you think a baguette that was left on the counter is okay to eat as it expired yesterday? Probably. Just if it's got mould, or anything on it, then don't. But you know. No. Well, yes, or an air fryer, which usually works just as well as the oven and water, without water. You get a crunchier experience definitely from them if they are slightly stale. You get a crunchier. It's far better for croutons and things like that, especially if you're making those sort of things. You want it to be slightly, yeah. Plus, don't take this the wrong way. This is speaking as someone who, during his PhD thesis, used to sometimes buy a baguette or something on the morning when he went into university, and would then be getting it out of the bag when he left the university the next day, leaving the library and going, "Oh, well, there's a delayed breakfast." It was also possibly counting as my lunch and dinner. I was not particularly healthy or sensible as a PhD student, okay? I just wasn't, okay? Yes? Don't joke. Seriously, look, I just love it when I see on the internet. I sit there going, I know you. I know you're not actually a bot. So I know this person. I know they're a thinking human being. And yet I will see them tweeting, "Russians, this is fantastic. This weapon's going to change the world." And then they will tweet a lot of let's say Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman. This is lies. All fake data. All fake data. And then I used to meet one person in particular. I see this do this. I used to then meet them, and a couple of days later, where we were doing our PhD at King's. And I said again, "So you honestly believe the Russians don't lie and your people do lie?" And his phrase always was the same. "Well, as an American, I know we have the ability to lie. The Russians, they don't think that much." And I used to regularly worry about that particular individual. I did. He's one of the few colleagues from the PhD cohort who I do not keep in touch with. Which is a shame. Yes. He honestly believed that the reason his reasoning for why all the Russian defense stuff that came out was honest truth was because they weren't smart enough to lie. I'm not going to say where they are now, but they work in a very large building in Washington where they support someone who is involved in the legislative process, let's say. Anyway, leaving that to one side, or at least he did last time I checked his. He messaged me on LinkedIn to become his friend, his contact on LinkedIn, and I think I forgot to accept it, so he might not be there still. Anyway, yes. Yes, there is. Oh yeah, that is when you're doing defense planning, you always take what the enemy is claiming pretty much at face value and add a bit onto it, because you presume they're downplaying their capabilities, not playing up their capabilities. However, that is a very different. That's something which I accept, and I always do, and I actually always do, and always that's how I advise you when you're developing ships or designing weapon systems. That's what you have to consider: what are the weapon systems which are likely to engage, and what's the likely role to be, and design its performance characteristics appropriately. But Yeah, it's applying the double standard, and it's the reasoning behind the double standard that got me with that particular colleague. It was not that he was presuming to write. It was that he was presuming that the Americans are lying about their capabilities, and the Europeans are lying, and the Koreans and the Japanese and the Chinese are all lying, but the Russians aren't. I just yes, that's going in a yeah. Please don't say. That's right. You send me a LinkedIn request. I log into LinkedIn once about every blue moon. I know there are more posts on there recently. That's because I got told off because I wasn't posting enough on my account. But that's merely because the social media software managing system I've got actually has a LinkedIn function, so I just post the same stuff to LinkedIn as I do to Twitter and Threads. I've used AI art like exactly 3 times. One of them is for a chibified picture of me and my dog, and the other one, the other one is for the some of the historians to the bilge pumps get together when I couldn't actually get a picture of all 4 of us together, so I had to produce one. And so I chose to chibi it so it would be obviously AI and fake, rather than trying to manipulate a photo and it people going, oh, you're trying to make it look real, and I'm going, no, it's obviously it's what we'd like to have. We'd love to have actually been sitting around in a pub or a library having a chat. We couldn't actually do it. Okay, I was one short. 4. Again, that's fine. That's fine, but I'm completely honest about why I'm using AI. My artistic skills suck. 2, this channel doesn't currently make enough money for me to hire an artist to do it, but I would do it someday. But I'm not also having people volunteer their time for free, because I feel if I can't pay them, that's just as bad. I know people might offer to do it, but especially if it's a last minute request and I can't pay them, I don't want to do that. At the moment, I've got a house which takes all my money. And thirdly, as said, I made them obviously AI, so frankly, I don't care. I operate on the same policy with my house as I do with AI. If I'm having to put in something to rectify an old thing, I've got 2 choices. I can either make the fix, try and make it look exactly like the old piece, and blend it in, which you do sometimes do because otherwise it's going to be an eyesore. Or alternatively, as I'm doing in the parquet floor, you can't get the same parquet floor anymore that we have in part of a house. So I'm putting so the parquet floor putting down is completely different. And it's going to be obvious that this bit is a new bit, and it's going to be a distinct little sort of square, and it's going to be obvious that that bit has been added in. And that's the whole point. We've got the regular wooden parquet, and then we're going to have areas which are going to be coloured parquet, different colours. And so it's going to be obvious that, oh, that's a bit which has been fixed and has had to be modernised, and that's the bit where in our case, it's where the fireplace was taken out, and that's the bit which is the original. And it's the same with AI. It's a case of, if I'm going to use AI art for something, I'm going to make it obvious I'm using AI art. I'm not going to try and pretend it's not. Hmm? Anyway, so there's an interesting question coming out, and I'm just going to make sure, I'll see if I can find a picture of it. Who has the best French here? Uh, how good was the French Ebonit Moose as a torpedo defense. Ebonit. Ebonit. Well, it's basically a lovely inflammable hard rubber. And basically they made it up into a mixture that allowed it to be sprayed, painted on things, and the idea was, as torpedo defense, it's more an addition to torpedo defenses than a torpedo defense in and of itself. Mm. And I can not find a decent picture of it which does not look like it in moose form, does not make it look like absolute a pile of black sick. I mean, literally, I can't. Yeah. Okay. I think so. Life is fun. Gossi de Padra, do you think a swing arm launcher scaled to Sea Dart size would be the primary land and air surface strike as an anti-air to save VLS depth? Swing arm launcher. Gossi de Padra, do you think a swing arm launcher scaled to Sea Dart size would be the primary land and surface strike, or as its anti-air to save VLS depth? You could use a swing arm launcher for those things, but it's a case of the main reason we are talking about swing arm launchers these days is because of reloading VLS at sea. Okay, and that's mainly to do with the air defense battle, which you're going to need far more missiles for than anything else, basically. Because we're into an era of what I would call active defense rather than passive defense. We've very much gone into the era of we are going to try and shoot down that shell coming in rather than taking the hit and, dealing with it. So, yes, there is a potential for a swing arm launcher to return. At the moment, I don't see anyone going there. But there again, I was wandering through a file the other day, and I'm going to see if I can get this upgraded to modern standard. If I can actually use it, I'll have to check a couple of places first. But there was a design me and my dad put together back a long, long time ago, when the Type 45 project was still the Horizon project, where we worked out our design of what we would build it to be. And we basically designed it over a large model railway in the garage. And he put it. I found when I was going through some of his old hard drives the other day that it was actually on files. He'd actually turned it into a full CAD drawing. And that thing was interesting because the Type 45 had been built to that standard. It would have had 120 Silver A50 VLS in two sets of 64, 64 Mark 41 VLS in two sets of 32. It would have had 64 Sea Scepter Seawolf style missile systems in 4 sets of 16. It would have carried 4 Otter Breda 76mm, 4 close-in weapon systems of Phalanx type, and would have had a 5-inch gun, and would also have had two twin torpedo launchers for each side. Torpedo launch tubes basically for each side. For launching the same torpedoes that helicopters can carry, and could carry 2 medium helicopters or 3 light helicopters. And it was a beauty of a ship. It does actually look something like a Type 45, but it looks like a Type 45, which someone has gone, so, we're going to give you all the missiles. And interesting enough, it had room for 4 of my dad's modular power systems, which was a setup of 2 diesel generators and a gas turbine, which he wanted to standardize in putting around ships. So they would they'd have 4 engine rooms like that, which would provide their power, and it would be into electric power. It was an interesting system. Could be nuclear intent. Could be. Yes. So,
of fire you might need out of a swing arm versus a VLS. Land strike, I think it makes a lot of sense to use swing arm for land strike, though.
it's Mark Fran. My sister cooked the lunch today, and let's put it this way: she was having troubles with the oven again. So, I need this.
I can't see what this is, but I'm sure that it's unhealthy.
It's a cherry bakewell.
Because when it comes to when it comes to swing arm in the modern era, it probably would be a use case for low intensity areas.
Mm-hmm.
Where Runan was right, you'd struggle with rate of fire when it comes to massed attack. But realistically, how many navies are actually looking at ships that can survive mass cruise missiles and anti-shipping missile volleys?
Define mass, but I'm going to say anything Aegis has a shot, especially if it's Aegis in a fleet in a formation.
Yeah, what it's like. So the US would probably need it, sort of the Royal Navy, so would plan and jet the Japanese. But if you're, say, a South American country or India, there might be a use case for the arm launchers, where it's just a cheaper, smaller alternative.
I think it's more that you might have because it's the thing. If you were going to go with a mixed kind of battery of a biggish VLS for your primary air defense missile, and you're going to have a swing arm launcher for your anti-surface, potentially anti-submarine, land attack, whatever missile systems. What you could be doing is having some anti-air in that. Have the ability to put some anti-air into that to either supplement, augment, or once you fired off all your VLS, you still have something other than hopes, prayers, and your air defense R2D2.
I think that's the point. To me, the swing arm launcher, if you have it, becomes the get me home, get me out of here missile system, which gives me something which can still provide cover while I'm getting out of there. If I decide it's time I've got to withdraw, and I can restock and reload that. But as said, if you consider, go back to the Clarke Type 45, as it's been christened in the chat already,
I think we prefer the phrase
would have carried
time to run away.
That would have carried 128 Astra missiles, plus 64 cam missiles, plus 64 Mark 41 VLS cells, which if you want to go, right, you're going to go on an air defense mission, so we're going to load you up with current, then paying them to upgrade Silver, the Aster missile, so it can fire from the Mark 41 VLS. But at this point, when we put the design, they couldn't. Or you could quad pack cam into Mark 41 VLS, so you could have gone, right then, I will take with me, like, I don't know, 320 cam missiles and 128 Asters as an air defense ship. And that's going to be a case of, so, as you blunted our entire attack, solo, and there are 2 of you in this battle group, we would please like to stop fighting you now. Because that's the other advantage of a VLS system. You can just literally ripple out your missiles. You can ripple out everything. But also, I would point out, and this is something I do try and put and emphasize in these discussions. One of the things that's often forgotten is the reason you have an aircraft carrier is because that is reloadable at sea. You can rearm that at sea, and you can restock the fighters and the fighters with their missiles. And so this is why you have your outer area of air defense becomes quite so important, and why carriers are quite so useful. It's often forgotten that people go, oh, ships' missiles are just long range as carrier strike these days. They are to an extent because honestly, we've let the carrier air arm wither. We have really underinvested in carrier aircraft. And so this is what we've ended up with. But the reality is, I can rearm my carrier at sea. I can put in more fuel for the aircraft. I can send more missiles across from a dry store ship, and I can rearm it, and it can be operating and carry on continuous operations quite happily. I can't reload VLS at sea. So the carrier, realistically, is my surest spear and surest shield for making sure I can do everything. And it's once you add the carrier and the task group together, and you have them all combined, all those forces together, that's when you have an actual chance in the face of, as Foxhill put it, a mass missile barrage or a long-term encounter. Lions, I'd have thought you'd have started on your swing arm launcher, and only if it got overwhelmed would you try and transition to VLS launcher. No. If you've got a Aegis command system, it would literally be going, right then, we will fire the swing arm launchers and we will fire the VLS at the same time. Dr. Wolf, tilt up the VLS cells, reload horizontally. Interesting enough, they have looked into that. The problem that came with it was actually the mechanisms and salt water. It's the age-old thing. It's trying to make the mechanisms work reliably in the scenario of salt water, and it's also the fact that often after the missile's fired, there are sections of the VLS cell which just have to be taken home and fixed and repaired.
Are you trying to tell me that it might actually, do a bit of damage, chucking several tons of missile at incredibly high speeds?
It's better in the more modern cold launch with the modern cold launch missiles than it is with the hot launch missiles. One of the reasons why they've actually one of the big advantages of a cold launch missile system is it does less damage to your VLS. That's actually part of the cost case for it. It's literally we won't have to deal with as much damage done to the VLS if this is a cold launch system. Yes, it's complicated to do. Yes, it is a nightmare to get right. Once you've got it right, it works fine. But it's worth it because longer term, you drop down the damage level. Hello, Elsid. And hello, everyone, by the way, to the chat. If I haven't chatted to you since you've arrived. There's a lot of fun things that you can do.
That's why I can't be heard. Okay, I figured that one out.
Yeah, and for Discord,
Beamer.
to an extent, for some reason, soft disconnected. In that I could still hear you in my thing, but it wasn't transmuting through to OBS. And I thought it was the OBS settings, but I checked it out and then I went to Discord, and I pressed a couple of things, and it worked. So if you do can no longer hear any of the colleagues when they're speaking, I'm just sitting here silent, nodding along with them. Do put it in the chat. Banana 1943. The baguette is good. I'm glad to hear this.
I dread the answer to this question, but has anybody put together a rotary magazined missile launcher?
Didn't the Russians do that?
Yes.
The Russians did a great many things, some of which even worked.
Yeah, the rotary magazine launcher was an interesting thing.
Oh, but no, that just gave me a really strange idea of, the capital autoloaders for 5-inch guns. Scaling that up, but for standard missile.
When will the range of torpedoes
would
compared to
prefer not to.
the anti-ship missiles be a limiting factor and force a transition away from the 21-inch torpedo? This is an interesting question to come in, and when we do open questions up, I hope to see that, because that's probably a good question to get to. We're getting through the questions quite fast, so we should be opening up again quite soon. I think we've only got about 15 to go, and probably about 10 till we open up again.
Okay, so just to confirm, I've got the text through from the Discord bug reporter.
Yeah.
And they are, quote, Discord status, investigating API availability issues.
Oh, fun. Runon, you put this in the chat so often that you have to send Runon to the host for incompetence. I'm thinking that's your plan. Hi, Steve.
You've answered exactly 5 questions so far.
Okay, that's fine.
So there are 25 to go.
Okay. I needed something funny and witty, humanizes me. I don't know.
9681. If the Blucher class armored cruisers were a decent match to the 16 9.2-inch gun armored cruisers the British considered in the design stage for the Naval class, who'd win? Let's see. In nicest way, the 16 9.2-inch gun armored cruiser designs, if I remember correctly, yeah, I don't think Blucher wins that fight. But also, they did have... this is the thing. I know I usually talk about it as the Tiger Cubs, the 9.2-inch gun cruiser dreadnought form, but there's actually earlier versions. And the earliest version is basically a dreadnought style layout with 10 9.2-inch guns in 5 twin turrets. They also then had a 12 one, which later came on, which actually for some reason retained the 2 wing turrets and had the aft turrets on the same line and super firing forward. Forward super firing, so they could actually fire 8 guns forward, 6 guns aft, and a broadside of 10 guns, I think it was. Yeah. But the thing is, I think the real advantage anything built by the British in the 9.2-inch gun scenario against the Blucher is going to be the numbers. It's always going to be the numbers. And again, this is where I get into trouble with some people when I'm doing the alternate histories, because the point I tend to make is that, for a very real fact, the Kaiserliche Marine of World War One, the Kriegsmarine of World War Two, the Regia Marina of both World Wars, the IJN, the Imperial Japanese Navy of both World Wars, they are hitting a ceiling of infrastructure utility. The British are also, to an extent, sometimes hitting a ceiling. But their ceiling is much higher. Much, much higher. And they do more work to increase the size of their ceiling and push it up. And they can push it up. They do have more infrastructure to build from in the first place and more personnel to build from. And and of course the Americans, well, the American ceiling is functionally how much is Congress willing to spend, because they are using that much virgin land to develop it, and that much, they are building from scratch anyway, so you might as well build a more. And that's the reality of a lot of these scenarios of, yeah, if the British had gone down a 9.2-inch gun route, Blucher would have looked far better. It would have looked far more like a viable specimen. I think it would have lasted for all of one class before you've ended up with back to 12-inch or even 13, jumping straight to 13.5-inch guns. But it would have been around, and Blucher would have looked more viable. But the thing is, they didn't do that. And I still don't think Blucher would have been a good bet for them, because, again, if the British had gone down a 9.2-inch route, they might well have gone for more than 3 of the Invincibles. I say that because the reason why the Invincibles only get 3, and one of the reasons why the Dreadnought is built and then it comes to Bellerophons, and there's only 3 of those ordered, is that they are running against a Liberal government which is trying to do deterrence by penny pinching. Because up until that point, the Royal Navy usually ordered in 4s and pairs. They rarely ordered in 1s. And, so nice way. If you're trying to recreate a warrior moment, what people often don't forget is a big part of the warrior moment is it's not just warrior, it's warrior and Black Prince. The British don't just build the world's biggest ironclad warship at the time, and most powerful ironclad warship at the time that can sail around the world and do all those things. They build her sister. People forget about that because it's called the warrior moment, but part of the warrior moment is the Black Prince. Because we didn't just build 1, we have 2, and we're working on a 3rd one, which we're going to modify the design of.
Oh, and they're going to work pretty much as soon as they hit the water, too.
Yes. And that's the moment, which is that's the real status. It's not we have the bigger ship. It's that we have multiple the bigger ship, we're building more, and you can't do anything about it, and you can't match this.
And we're also able to deploy said big ship right into your home turf.
Yeah, because people think having these ships is about the status of the ship itself, as in the capabilities that ship brings to the table. And it is in part, but realistically it's saying, look what we can build. And if you can build one of them, that ship's scary. If you can build multiple of them and you're working on more, you're scary. In one scenario, you have a scary ship. It's kind of like if I was walking down the street and I had 1 corgi with me, versus if I had a pack of corgis with me. In one scenario, I have a dog which is a small version of a tank. It's a scary. It can be a threat if it wants to be. It's not likely to be. It usually likes to say hello to people and be friendly. But don't be rude to its mother. It will turn you into stone with a stare. But in another scenario, when you have a whole pack of them, it's a case of, oh, you have just taken over the street. This street is now Corgi Town. Yes. Yeah, Raptor. Basically, nice trick. Can you do it again? Does another 2. 2 of the class. Oh, right, sugar. Yeah. That's the thing. Britain doesn't just build... This is the trouble with Dreadnought. This is why Dreadnought doesn't land the way Warrior does. Because they do save money and they only build Dreadnought. You're basically going... You build it, and then the British next year realise what they've done and rush ahead with 3 Bellerophon and the Invincibles. And you sit there and go... You kind of lost the moment. Whereas... Turn around, make it set at Dreadnought, Lord Nelson, Agamemnon, and maybe a 4 for all Dreadnought class ships. If the Royal Navy drops that and delivers that, and that's rolling off the lines in 1905, 1906, what's that effect on the world? when not just the first in the world, but the first 4 in the world, before anyone else has them, are these ships. That hits differently, doesn't it? There's you have the first ship in the world, there's the you have the first battle division in the world. Okay. Hello, Nightwolf. Hello, Lions. Wayne, lots of questions.
So, in a way, ships almost act like cavalry,
Yes.
where one guy on a horse might be a little bit miffing, but if 30 guys on horses and you don't have a horse comes along, it's a case of,
Yeah.
why are we even bothering?
It's a case of one guy on a horse is, oh, I'm sure he's a very good warrior. This is going to be a tough fight. There's 100 guys on horseback charging towards me. Okay. This is a problem. This can break me.
Yeah.
The questions will be open shortly, Gypsy Danger. Castor, what's
You'll
the most...
see the banner change once it happens.
The banner will change. We've tested it all. Castor, what is the most recorded ice warship has been coated and survived? Okay, we don't have it actually recorded in metric tons, because believe it or not, in the Arctic convoys they weren't checking. But the race in the Arctic convoys, in terms of picture forms, is between HMS Belfast and HMS Sheffield, which are both, according to the pictures of them, reckoned to have had enough ice on them to have increased their displacement by 70%. Which explained why they would have been getting far too low to the water, but the ice had built them up so much they actually did have almost the equivalent of an extra deck.
That couldn't have been good for the hulls.
No, it wasn't good for their turrets either.
Irreverent question, but what would the British have done if they used an argument in the treaties that, well, we need to have extra displacement for ice loading, so we get Y percentage additional displacement on all of our light ships?
The British would have used it and claimed all their ships had to regularly go up in the Arctic waters. So would probably the Japanese.
And the Americans would cite Alaska and do the same.
Yes.
And the Italians would grumble.
The Italians would probably be looking for some kind of, okay, what's an uncolonized piece of Arctic Circle territory?
Or Antarctic Circle.
Yeah, true.
There's
more free real estate down there.
Yeah. And in Carrot 1151, counter to how would Nelson act at various battles questions, you get how far back do you think a modern Royal Navy captain animal could go back in time and still command effectively? Well, considering they are taught quite a lot of naval history, I know I've helped out with it occasionally, in their service, in their training, they could go back quite well and do quite well. The big problem is going to be when people can no longer understand what they're saying, when English changes. So realistically, they could probably go back to about the 18th century and still be able to communicate effectively enough to command. Before then, things get a little bit more difficult.
But doable.
I do now have a slight sense of kind of wanting to see the I'm trying to think what the right word for it is. Nelson just jumps back and is, say, given command of 5th Battle Squadron at Jutland. I was like, right, lay us alongside.
HMS Warspite's in that squadron. Don't give her the idea.
Yeah,
Alex,
that's the problem.
Yes, Steve.
All right, Alex, in terms of the linguistics, Simon Rimmer, who does other YouTube videos talking about going back into the past and people speaking, reckons you could probably go back with modern English back to James I and Elizabeth, and probably still be able to understand and speak, and the people would understand you about 75-80% of the time.
Because the absolute cutoff for when English is unrecognizable is the 14th century.
Yeah,
Because
you can sort of understand Chaucer.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's close enough you could pick it up pretty quickly. If you go back to the 14th century and 13th century, English is now a gendered language. And you're relearning the rules of grammar.
I hate gendered languages. All my homies hate gendered languages. I do not intend to date or have relations with a couch. I do not need to know its gender.
Look, one of the
German,
reasons-
I am looking at you.
Okay, one of the reasons why I picked the 17th century, and this is despite knowing and having heard many of these arguments over the years, sort of going back to the early 18th century, late 17th century sort of scenario, is because also the terminology of naval officers in terms of linguistics, in terms of command, changes quite radically around then.
That's fair.
And the thing is, whilst they learn the history, they're not taught the terminology. And it's another thing to be able to have to go and command a battle, pick up the terminology, and also to deal with the linguistic exchanges. So to be effectively command, that's why I picked when I did. But yeah, there is the thing that you could go back and... But also, one of the problems with a lot of the testing done on that, and this is going to sound terrible, is a lot of people who do the testing are historically inclined persons anyway. Because usually the people who are available to go, I want you to listen to these words and see if you can work out what they are usually students who are doing language courses or humanities students who are historians. And I don't consider that necessarily the best sampling for working out of people going backwards in time and being able to understand things. For some reason, I consider those people to be already slightly pre-inclined towards it.
That's fair.
No, not disagreeing. Not disagreeing.
It's a case of
I'm just merely going.
I have this discussion with the academics in the conferences, and I go, yes, but who were your sample people? Well, they're the students from my course.
Yes, the students from your
course.
Historic English course.
Yeah. So
where they study historic English.
Well, they don't always. Some of them are just doing English language, or they're doing, they're already doing history, and that you'll be introduced to some of the phrases already, and it starts to give you a bit of a key into it. It's a fun one, but it's also like the other thing they tend to with English, if you go back in the far enough, is the dialects you get, and you don't really have English as the structured central language you have today. Because if you consider it, if you go back to the late 17th century, early 18th century, most people in the area where I'm at were speaking Cornish more than English. And their English would have been very lacking in fluency. And you often, some of the command structures, etc., some of the people are literally picked, we do know they're being picked as petty officers in Royal Navy ships, are literally because they can speak both English, which is the language they're all running, and a couple of the regional dialects or two, so they can actually keep people sort of together. And English as a language, especially as a command structure language, actually comes together from the Navy and the Army to an extent, but more often the Navy, because the Navy actually keeps going, and the Navy has to write books and get these things to work together. And it's one of the things of you have a language which is spoken by court and the elites in this taught in education, and then you have the language which is spoken by the people, and you have the Navy having to exist between the two, and it's a fun area of history.
Random question,
yeah,
and mainly as a verification to something I heard on the internet.
No, you cannot understand Geordies even today, let alone if you go back to the 17th century. There's just
Actually,
no
I'm
chance.
pretty reasonable doing so.
Okay, that wasn't what I was going to ask, but now I want to relate a humorous story involving a Welsh streamer. But anyway, is there any truth to the so far unsubstantiated rumor that some Chinese or Asian language squadrons are using English as a call-out language in their maneuvers and training?
Not really. They work it. And
Okay.
to answer, John South and Thomas seem to having discussing about it. Actually, the Royal Navy's brought back doing navigation training using the old systems, including the what's it called? Brain's gone dead on the S thing that they use for navigating.
Sextant.
Sextant. They've gone back to it, and they've been teaching them because it suddenly came up a few years ago. What happens if GPS goes down? What happens if this all stuff goes down? So you have to be taught the old system using maps and sextants as backup in case the systems go down. And also, they found it pretty good to give them a fundamental training. So they have gone back to that. They aren't entirely reliant on the GPS system, but that's the Royal Navy. I'm not sure about all other navies. I think most navies which do sail training ships do it and still have it as part of their training. I'm not sure about the Americans. I've had different points put forward by different officers, but again, this is not something. There was a period where it was taken out, but when it said modern naval officers, I presumed that would be from today, not a period in the 1990s where they had a lot of bright ideas.
I have it on exceptionally good information that at least during Clinton era, it was a problem that was identified and instructed to be amended on at least some bridge crews.
That's good.
Whether or
at
not
least they're not going back to. Sorry.
Whether or not that change made it to the entire fleet, I don't know, but when an extremely senior petty officer makes a bit of a fool out of your bridge crew, I would hope that gets spread around.
Yeah, these things tend to cause trouble. You don't want a senior petty
at least
officer
they have.
Yes.
At least they would still have less of a. At least they would have less of a problem with longitude than they did historically, because at least their watches will be accurate.
Yeah, as long as they don't run out of battery power. You never know.
Yeah.
It depends on how highfalutin the officer thinks of himself, because an automatic chronograph could, a modern good chronograph could last a very long time.
If they're carrying one with them.
Yeah, that's the problem.
YouTube Minecraft
I'm
Watcher.
not using an Apple Watch.
Oh, no. Seriously, the sheer number, in the nicest way, I swear I can tell that apart. Sometimes, on some days, I can tell which section of the Royal Navy you come from by which kind of brand of smartwatch you use. YouTube Minecraft Watcher. What if the Russian Empire in 1895 joined an alliance with Germany, Norway, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire? How would it affect global politics and each country's growth? In this instance, Russia splits the Balkans into two spheres of influence to prevent allied incident fighting. The Germans and Austrians, in return, would help Russia build its railway network and industrial base, and the free in trade for all would give Norway military support. You've got an alliance of Germany, Norway, Austro-Hungary, and Russia. Sweden's invading Norway before that even gets agreed.
Yeah, I was going to say, what universe
before you get into Sweden, possibly even Denmark's joining with Sweden. Neither wants Russia to be anywhere near them, and as far as they're concerned, Russia getting that close is going to be problematic. Add in, the British and the French are going to be looking at going, excuse me? You probably get Italy automatically joining the Anglo-French, excuse me, and Japan very shortly afterwards.
Isn't Norway still part of Sweden?
No, Norway, Sweden
Not
broke
na-
up about 60 years previously.
Yes, but the trouble is, it's 1895. Sweden is still not going to want Norway to be allied with Russia.
I thought it was 1905. There was something. What was it happened in 1905 then? With all of them.
No, I think that is when Denmark, that the Norwegians get one of the Danish princes to become their king.
Okay, so the political union had broken in the 1890s. In 1905 was the finalization of it with the unions. I'm not going to try and say that, which finalized the separation of the monarchies.
Yep.
But they were politically separate.
Yeah.
But it still means that I don't think in 1895 the Swedes are going to sit around for Norway to become a joint member of an alliance with Russia.
No.
That probably torpedoes the negotiations for Norwegian independence.
Yeah, considering at this point, as I understand, I think the Swedish and Norwegian flags. I think the Swedish flags still at this point make reference to the fact that Norway is part of them.
Yeah.
Because they're carrying a badge of union.
Norway is the westernmost Nordic country?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not counting Iceland?
So in the Bruships stage is the naval ensign for Sweden Norway.
Yeah.
I think they might have took a bit of influence from the British there.
Yes, there is a little bit of influence going on there.
Just stick the subject country's emblem in a corner.
Well, you know. There you
Paul,
go.
you'll be happy to know that I'm gathering as much blood as possible.
What?
Oh, God.
Paul will understand.
Will you stop worshipping corn?
I'm not worshipping corn.
We've
I'm
been over
avoiding
it.
the worm.
Stop worshipping corn. You're turning into a vampire. Montana 61. If the
Embrace other cereals.
If the British had removed the torpedoes and the Nelsons, where would the freed up tonnage have gone into? If they freed up the tonnage of the torpedoes, they're probably going to put it towards the engines a little bit and armor.
Are we talking?
They got rid of the torpedoes from the Nell rods.
I mean, if we took them out from the initial design originally, then with the way that they built the Nelsons, it would probably go into more armor. But fingers crossed, it will go into messing up the turret lightening less.
We could always hope.
If it's later on, so sort of mid to late 1930s, it's hopefully going to go on more AA, and they can convert the space deep in the ship into either potentially ammunition storage or more improving the protection of the cheese store.
Question for the ignorant, i.e. me. With a torpedo flat, is the big problem volume or is the big problem weight?
It's
like,
height,
what are you losing?
It's height in the hull. It's weight, and it is weight, but it's also height and space in the hull. It's quite a big space. It's quite actually a highly dangerous space for the ship.
It's basically a void space in the hull itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Something my father said about HMS Rodney, because he did sort of serve on HMS Rodney in 1944. He said that one of the things that was severely a problem that they were often repairing was all the aluminium fittings kept bending. So you probably want to replace a lot of the aluminium fittings that were causing those problems.
That's just dirty aluminium.
Yes.
There's not really much you can do about that.
And
Well,
the thing is,
that was the lightning. That
no,
was the way they did the lightning stuff.
yeah, but they put aluminium on all sorts of things. There's also aluminium on the destroyers. All sorts of things have aluminium fittings for things. Um, it was something which was used in spaces where it was felt not to matter too much. They put the aluminium.
It could also just be as simple as use a slightly different alloy.
Honestly, probably
Because
would have been easier to fix. It would have been just to make it slightly bigger, slightly thicker. I mean,
yeah,
because that was sort of
Yeah.
part of the trouble. They were
But
trying to
that
use
was
very
but
thin
that
aluminium at some points.
yeah, but that was something my father said. He said a lot of the aluminium was one of the things that they were constantly doing repairs on when she was coming back into port after bombarding in Normandy.
although I am now glad to finally learn the secret British metal that they used to win the war.
Right?
I've never heard of aluminium before. Aluminum? Yeah, I've heard of aluminum,
We
but
discovered it. We get to name it. You guys can mispronounce it all
Yeah.
you want.
and I still think you're mispronouncing it there, boss man.
Check
It's
the spelling.
literally
It's
the rest
actually
of the
we spell
world
it different.
and the US.
Yeah, we it's
no.
actually spelled differently.
Yeah, the Americans just couldn't handle the spelling of it. Montana 61. If the British had answered that one, Gossip Planet, UK has Warspite U. Sorry,
Yeah, the
Gossy,
question
I don't think your
cut off.
questions come through. Okay. Right then.
If you go down to
Chris
question 18, it's down there, so we've got it already.
Okay, that's good. Chris Height Human 6360. Which war sim has
Simulator.
simulator? Has the most historically accurate gun and torpedo accuracy modeling?
Don't feel too bad. I thought they were talking about The Sims, as in the EA. I drowned the entire family in the pool by removing the ladder game.
Well, the trouble is we already had a general sim
It's okay.
sim question, so I've been thinking. I was going, okay, Field Marshal Sim. Oh no, it's on him.
I was thinking Admiral Sims because you've been touting about his book for a while.
Yeah. Which war has sim has most? Considering its propensity for missing, but also occasionally causing trouble, UAD was pretty good with gun accuracy and torpedo accuracy modeling. World of Warships is interesting, mainly because they've cut the ranges down so much to get, and this is part of gameplay. Okay, I like World of Warships. I think it's a really good tool for getting people involved in history. But they have cut down, and this is the one bugbear which I tell them about to their face and on Armchair Admirals and every other thing. They have cut down. They've cut down in order to make it exciting. They've cut down the spaces of engagement to the fact you're practically engaging at point blank range. And there is literally, for some the realistic engagement ranges, there is no excuse you should be missing at all. It's none at all should be missing, basically.
Also, their time of flight is unrealistic. I've just been looking at the stuff, and it's like a 6-inch shell would take going out to 20,000 yards from a British gun would take 47 seconds to get there.
Wait, why are we using yards?
Because that's
Warships
the way
doesn't use yards.
Because the range table the Royal Navy used was in yards.
What's it in meters? Because as I said, Warships does not use yards.
18,290.
Right.
Has a time of...
Keep in mind, technically speaking, what Clarke said was not quite accurate. They haven't reduced the ranges. What they've done is they've compressed everything. So 1 kilometer in World of Warships is not representative of what 1 kilometer actually should be.
I was sort of meaning by reducing range, they've compressed the combat area down to a very much smaller area than it would actually have been. for game.
They've compressed
games.
everything.
And it's to make the gameplay work. And this is the thing. This is the point about I have to make about computer games. There is no such thing as a perfect computer game because it's supposed to be a playable, enjoyable experience for people. War is not a playable, enjoyable experience.
It's like one of my favorite games of all time is currently EU5, but it's also that's brilliant for me. But most people wouldn't want to play a 15th century economic simulator that's spread over 300 years.
Gareth
In
is
the
trying
same
to get
way.
me to play Whiskerwood, whatever it is. I'm worried about this.
Barrett, assuming that you actually did have stars on your collar, I can think of at least one other admiral who has almost certainly not played World of Warships.
Lots of admirals haven't played Warships.
Admiral Rossosvensky.
Okay, but they did not exist. They did not exist concurrently with World of Warships. So I think we can discount them from the assessment.
Equation.
I can think of one admiral who is in his 80s who I've just introduced to the wonderful world of Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. And I'm now getting some very wackadoodle pictures sent from me of the various screenshots of ships he's designed.
He's not an American admiral, is he?
Nope.
Okay, good. There's a 0% chance that I know him.
He's a Canadian.
Still a 0% chance that I know him.
Wait. Canada has admirals? Don't you need a navy and an armed forces
They do
to have an admiral?
They do have those things.
The Mounties don't count.
Actually, they do. They have battle honours.
In nice way, do not be rude about Diefenbaker. Diefenbaker always counts.
Yeah, fair.
Nice
I don't want to defend.
Diefenbaker alone could solo an entire enemy armed force because he's a wolf with a Mountie hat. In 1981, if the British built a class of 16 9.8 to 2-inch gun armoured cruisers, what reason would be given if not to not have the Hawkins get to it? Well, the nicest way, if you're building 9.2-inch gun cruisers back then, there's going to be a whole load of other ones which come off them, which means Hawkins are going to be multiple levels down the development line of cruisers. So we've changed history. You're talking about an end of World War One, post World War One class versus a very much early 1900s class. There's going to be a lot of things change in between, which are going to change things. So how it changes, who knows? It's unlikely, but you know. Listening, oh, that Diefenbaker. Yes, some of you all suddenly realised I was making a Due South reference.
Good show.
It was a good show. It had a good tune as well. It was a catchy tune. Boom. What if the Victoria dies in 1838, returning Hanover and UK to personal union under Ernest Augustus? That's going to change a lot of history. It might not work, though. The British government were very keen to avoid personal unions.
Because unions, as we all know, are for the labor class.
No, it's that we're talking about national unions with European powers.
European powers means European wars. European wars are expensive.
Now, the thing is, the Duke of Cumberland had tried to push for the throne multiple times and had been managed to be prevented.
Soundly rebuffed?
Well, the one that they were actually quite happy when he jumped off. It's one of the things. Technically, it should have been him, but I could see the British government finding a way around it. Because you have to remember, the relationship between the crown and government is always a complicated one. There is a theory and there's the reality. Which, for example, if you consider as early as the Regency Act of 1840, there's literally an act of Parliament which pretty much makes it impossible for him to come and try and take the throne. And that was established before she marries Prince Albert, before she has any children. They go to great lengths to make sure it's very difficult for Augustus to get anywhere near the crown, because he was considered not the
not the right sort.
No, he's considered a moron.
Minister, I'm sure there's a better way of putting that.
Yeah, there probably is, but the fact is, pretty much the British government at the time felt he was
unsuited for the burdens of leadership.
Well, let's put it this way. He had singly managed to make himself in an area which is pretty pro-royal family. He had managed to make himself pretty unpopular by keep demanding increases in pay and increases in money from the House of Commons. He was, he was a firm opponent of the Catholic Emancipation Bill and managed to piss off the Duke of Wellington, which was interesting. To such an extent that he caused Wellington to resign. Cumberland, as he was at the time, Ernest Augustus tried to organise a anti-Catholic government, found he wasn't able to organise an anti-Catholic government, so the king had to invite Wellington back to be prime minister again, and that meant that Ernest had just shown that he could cause trouble, but he couldn't deliver on it. So he basically annihilated his political position.
All I know is that I must walk without rhythm to avoid attracting the worm.
He's going to start singing The Bird in a second, isn't he? But yeah, basically, if Queen Victoria dies in 1838,
who's going to start singing the what?
And Queen Victoria dies in 1838, and Ernest Augustus somehow becomes king, the odds are that it's done with way of he has to renounce Hanover or something to get to the UK, because one of the reasons they don't trust him is because of his earlier political positions and because of the personal nature of Hanoverian rule. Hanover would theoretically give him the ability to have forces he could use to try and impose himself. It wouldn't work, but it could cause trouble. Someone please send Runon the link to that particular song.
I'll be honest, I've never heard of it, so...
What?
I'm just letting everybody know they need to walk without rhythm so they don't attract the worm. Walk without rhythm, or you'll never learn.
I just assumed that was some sort of Dune reference. Wouldn't understand.
Knight 6831, Runon, resident transtrition. Is that your username? Given that it is the username which comes up whenever I send a message in YouTube chat, yes, Knight, I would say that is my username. I don't know what answer you expected from that.
There you go. That should teach you all you need to know about the word and the bird.
Everybody knows that bird is the word.
Meep meep. I'm a
This
sheep. I said,
this
meep,
seems
meep, I'm
like
a sheep.
something that's
Meep,
too
meep, I'm a
hyperactive
sheep.
for me.
I said, meep meep. I'm
Okay.
a sheep. You date Foxo.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Now, we're just about to enter what is possibly going to be Foxo's favourite question tonight. What is the panel's favourite jet aircraft? Never mass-produced or paper designs are fine as well. I'm
Do
quite
we
fond
let
of
her
the
go
F4
first or
Phantom
last?
and the XB-71, nuclear bomb version of the SR-71. I'm going to allow Foxo to go first, because she'll probably be debating between multiple versions of the Sea Vixen, and then everyone else in any time remaining.
So, A, the Sea Vixen is dragon. B, I could redo the joke I did with Fleet on Friday, but I'll be nice. It's the Pabnavia Tornado GR4, specifically in its fighter bomber conversion.
wait a moment. Wasn't the question of what one was either not or in very limited production?
It sounds like they could count. They counted. That you could use them.
Okay, right. Just wanted to double check on that one, because that one would be potentially quite a big difference.
Well,
Montana 67, you date Foxo is not an insult. It's a statement of you saying you're like a
It's
low
fact.
energy life. You date Foxo. That's not a low energy life.
It just say favourite jet aircraft. You can include the non-mass produced or paper designs.
Okay, and then I would like to change my answer slightly. The proposed Tornado GR6, which was a test to see if they could mount the Meteor Air long-range air-to-air missile to a Tornado. They could. It just came in the middle of the peace dividend, and
Oh, of course.
the peace dividended.
So I have a problem, and I think my answer is going to be I don't have a favorite, because there are so many jet aircraft I would consider in the running for my favorite jet aircraft. I don't think I have a favorite. It's like asking me which one of my minis I like the most or hate the most, or which one of my dice has screwed me over the most.
Linguistics, but okay.
Uh,
The answer is all of them, but we'll leave that to one side.
Yeah. Now, if you ask prop aircraft is easy. I can do that very easily. But jet aircraft is harder. I like the Phantom. I like the I like the Saber. Yeah, I don't have a favorite, basically. I like a lot of them.
Right. With that being said, Wayne's World of Science and Tech.
What about Dragon and Dan?
And Dan? Dan, I haven't heard from in a while. I was presuming he was getting food.
No. I mean the Valkyrie. Oh, remember what it was? XB
71.
Yeah, I think so. That was pretty attractive. I have a soft.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, why am I suddenly
I don't know if
having
my
a
favorite,
bad
but it was definitely one I did very much enjoy. Was the B1 Lancer, which is a plane I will argue for variable geometry rings also looks good.
Dragon, you need to take your pet fox to the optometrist so she can get her eyes checked.
Okay.
While I don't agree with her, I rather like my eyes being intact. You know when you
Yes,
sort of pick up a cat and they start clawing at you?
you need to
Okay,
take
fine.
one for
With
the
a fox.
team.
just for a second, but
Because
Wait a sec.
for some
Go on, Clarke.
reason, OBS is reconnected and disconnecting about 6 times in a row now. It seems to have now stabilized. No, it hasn't. It's crashing again. That's okay. That's crashing again. I'm not